Chapter 15, Exchange and Completion. So the exchange and completion stages form the backbone of a residential property transaction in the UK and providing a clear structure for the transfer of ownership. While the exchange of contracts solidifies the legal commitment of both parties, completion is the moment of tangible change, signalling the handover of keys and the beginning of a new chapter in the buyer's home ownership journey. Understanding and navigating these processes are essential for a successful and legally sound property transaction in the UK. So, once all the checks and searches are completed and your solicitor has sent their report and answered any of your questions, you will sign the contract if you haven't already done so. At this point, the buyer usually pays a deposit, typically around 5 to 10% of the property's purchase price. When both the buyer and seller are ready, their solicitors will exchange the signed contracts. Now, this process is usually done over the phone or by post, but usually over the phone. The solicitors read out the contracts to ensure they are identical and then immediately send them to each other. So once the contracts are exchanged, a binding agreement is formed between the buyer and the seller. And at this stage, the completion date is also fixed, typically 1 to 2 weeks after the exchange. The completion date is when the remaining funds are transferred and ownership of the property is legally transferred to the buyer. On exchange, your solicitor will request the money from your mortgage company, which usually takes 5 days. It is at exchange when you can confirm removal contracts. On the agreed completion day, the buyer's solicitor transfers the remaining funds to the seller's solicitor. Once the payment is received, the keys to the property are released and the buyer becomes the legal owner of the house. Completion marks the official transfer of ownership from seller to the buyer. The land registry is notified of the change in ownership and the buyer becomes the legal owner of the property. This process ensures that the property's title is updated to reflect the new ownership.